When it comes to electrification, Swedish company Volvo made a commitment to go fully electric by the year 2030. That commitment started about 5 years ago with the introduction of the T8 turbo supercharged electrified powertrain. Now, of course, since then, the industry continues to move toward electrification, so it's time for Volvo to give the T8 powertrain a pretty substantial overhaul. And to test it out, I'm actually out here in Palm Springs, California with Volvo to drive this brand new 2023 XC60 T8 Recharge. It gets a new, larger battery pack, a stronger rear electric motor, which results in more range and better performance. So if you guys have been looking for a T8 electrified Volvo, how does this brand new 2023 model stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So we first saw the all-new second-generation XC60 back in 2017. So for 2022, it is time for Volvo to give this car a mid-cycle refresh. So I want to first, of course, show you guys underneath the hood because the styling changes are pretty small. Really, the big changes are what you find underneath this hood. Now, this engine may look pretty much the same. However, it is a new engine. It's now a 2-liter turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder. Volvo lopped off the supercharger from the pre-refreshed model. They did that because they said they were looking for better fuel efficiency, better emissions, and they also supplemented it with a much larger battery pack. They basically added a third layer of cells to expand the battery capacity to 18.8 kilowatt hours. That's much bigger versus the 11.6 kilowatt hours for the pre-refresh model. The usable capacity is around 14.8 kilowatt hours, so still a much larger battery pack. It also is supplemented by an electric motor at the back axle that adds an extra 147 horsepower or 142 horsepower. That's an increase versus the 87 horsepower that you had from the pre-refresh model. The gas engine on its own makes about 312 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. When you add the gas engine and the electric motors together, you get a total of 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. That is the most that you're going to find in the compact plug-in hybrid luxury SUV segment. So this is more power and basically at the top of the class for range. Only the Lexus NX plug-in gets 37 miles of range, which is only 2 better versus the Volvo. And because of the larger battery pack, this car now qualifies for the full $7,500 federal tax credit, which is going to be great, especially with lowering the price of this vehicle if you're considering one. Now, in terms of gas mileage efficiency for just the gas engine, we don't have those final numbers just yet. The old one got around 25 miles per gallon combined. I expect this one to do similar. It should do about 57 mpge, which doesn't really make sense because that's a combination of the gas and the electric powertrains. If you guys are planning to do SUV things, this will still tow a maximum of 3,500 pounds. Volvo says the improved performance results in 0 to 60 in around 4.5 seconds. As this one sits, it weighs in at around 4,800 pounds. So this is a good 400 pounds heavier versus the gas-only version. And remember, this is a plug-in hybrid, so you use an 8-speed auto, thankfully not a CVT like what you might find in something like the Lexus NX. Closing the hood, let's briefly talk about some of the subtle styling changes that Volvo has made this year. You can see, unless you are literally parking this car next to the old version, you're not going to be able to tell the differences. The one I'm showing you is the fully loaded inscription trim. It's more of the luxury-oriented model. You can also get an R design. You can also get an Polestar engineered version. I'd probably go for one of those for the more aggressive look. The grille's probably the biggest distinction between the old one. You have the newer Volvo logo here. This houses the camera and the radar sensors for the driver assistance tech. This logo here is actually heated on its own separate element. So snow and ice won't accumulate on this and block out the sensor like you might find on some competing vehicles. The grille also has been changed. It's got the new inverted slats, which are chrome plated on the inscription, more chrome on the lower front fascia. And if you want, you can black that out with the sportier trims. I also like the headlights. They continue to look good with the Thor's Hammer LED, daytime running light, turn signal, LED low and high beams. No fog lights on the inscription model. I believe you can get that on some of the sportier versions of the car. And this new color for 2022 is called Silver Ice. I probably wouldn't go for this color, but it goes well with the lines of the vehicle. And Volvo offers several different color options as well if you guys prefer something a little bit more bright. Now, looking at the side profile, the dimensions haven't changed because this is a mid-cycle refresh at 185 inches long. This is basically right in the middle in terms of the overall length. Its wheelbase is around 112.2 inches long. This is built off of the SPA architecture, the scalable product architecture that it shares with the XC90. You can see my inscription model has these big 20-inch wheels wrapped in 255/45 R20 tires. These are Continental Cross Contact. These wheels and tires, they actually look a little bit small, surprisingly, but you can get a bigger wheel if you guys go for the R design with a fatter tire. I also like the kind of twin color or the bicolor with the machine finish and the black look. My tester also has an adjustable air suspension. It will jack it up probably about 2 inches in off-road mode. Right now this is in the normal setting, which I believe gives you just under 8 inches of ground clearance, so that's going to be enough for most people. Now looking at this little flap right here, this is the charge port door for the J1772 connector. As you can see, because it's just a plug-in hybrid, there is no DC fast charging port. Instead, you just got that standard connector. I believe it'll take about 4 hours to charge this vehicle on a level 2, or about 12 hours if you guys are just going to do a slower level 1. You can see all of the chrome is pretty heavily apparent on the inscription version. I also like the silver roof rails. There's a big panoramic roof at the top of this vehicle. And I also just really like the proportions. The rear, the design hasn't really changed at all, really. You have to stare at it to see all the differences. You have the typical Volvo styling elements here, of course, with the vertical LED taillights with the LED turn signal. There's a white T8 all-wheel drive inscription or recharge badge. And then down here at the rear bumper, you can see Volvo has removed the exposed exhaust tips and gotten rid of any kind of sport exhaust, even on the Polestar Engineer or the R design. They wanted to go for a more electrified look, so that's why they're getting rid of the exhaust tips, because I guess exhaust just means dirty because the world is heading toward electric. Now, looking at the cargo area, this is measuring just over 30 cubic feet of space with the second row seats up. If you want to fold down those seats, it expands it out to about 64 cubic feet. It's on the larger end of the segment. You can see all my stuff fits back here nicely. If you open this up, you can see there is a nice place where you can store your mobile charger. You can hide a few other things, which is nice. So overall, the cargo capacity, this remains one of the largest that you'll find in the segment. So now let's take a look at the interior of the updated XC60. The first thing I want to show you guys is the key fob. You guys have known this key fob for a while. It's Volvo's Intelligent Access key. They used to wrap this in the same leather material as your actual interior. Now you can see it's just covered in a cheaper plastic material. I believe there's access via a remote app, but I don't have access to that because this is a press car. Now opening up the door, let's take a look at the interior of my tester here with the silver ice exterior. It's got this tailored wool gray interior where it has a lot of character. I actually really like this interior a lot. This wool material, Volvo says, is treated so it's able to resist stains and dirt. So that's something that to keep in mind. Obviously, if you guys are afraid you have kids, you might spill stuff all over this. I'll have to believe it when I see it in terms of the stain resistance, but for now, I'll just take Volvo's word for it. The seats you can see are pretty nice. These are included with the inscription model. Volvo has been trying to remove a lot of the leather in their vehicles. They want to go with sustainable materials, with vegan materials. So the XC60 Recharge is now starting to follow in that same footstep, of course, with the sustainable materials. The seats you can see are like a 16-way power adjustment with a 4-way lumbar. You can also adjust the bolsters and the thigh extender. For some reason, however, my fully loaded model is missing massaging seats. I would have liked to see massaging seats. They used to put that on the inscription, but for some reason, this one doesn't have it. The door panel you can see has the soft touch injection molded plastic, a metal door handle. You have the metal speaker covers for the $3,200 Bowers & Wilkins stereo system, and more of that merino or that textured wool trim material, which again looks good, but I would have liked to see a little bit more leather stitching on the actual door panel. Now getting inside, you have a nice easy step-in height because this vehicle is an SUV with around 8 inches of ground clearance. Shut the door. The door has a nice solid sounding thunk, which gives you an impression of quality. Now getting in, I turned this little stalk to the right to turn the vehicle on. And you can hear it has the typical Volvo chimes here that you pretty much expect. This gauge display here has been updated to get their newest design here. You have a 12.3-inch fully digital display where you can kind of customize the look of it. It's pretty similar to the XC40 Recharge that I last tested sometime late last year. The 9-inch touchscreen here looks the same. However, it's now based on the Android operating system, so it has the Google Assistant built in. And then, of course, you have Android Auto, which you don't even really need because you just log into your Google account. For those of you who have Apple phones like myself, if you're looking for Apple CarPlay, it's still not here. That's the one thing that Volvo has been promising us for months, is it'll be coming in an over-the-air update, but sadly, it's still not here as of March 2022. You can see the rest of this interior, beautiful materials. You have real elegant stitching with a kind of like a leather material on the dash. The Bowers & Wilkins stereo here, the tweeter looks really good. You have this Art Deco matte finish wood, which is beautiful. I actually wish I found more of it on the door panels. Down here you can see it's a soft touch plastic. The volume knob is right here in the center. You have a tuning button over here, and then you can see the Sensus Connect system works pretty well. I'm sorry, I called it Sensus Connect, but this is no longer Sensus Connect. That's the older system. Push this little button here. You can see there's all your usual tabs where you can access all your apps. push this little camera button here, you can see you can access the full top-down 360 camera that my tester has. It's part of an option. And you can also access your heated seats and heated steering wheel, but my tester is missing cooled seats. So I don't think you can get that with the tailored wool material. So that's something to keep in mind. You may have to go for the fake leather material. There's your climate function, of course, which this vehicle does have an in-air cabin micro filter. And then pushing over here, you can see there's where your home button is. We can use the Google Map display. It also puts it right there. And the instrument panel, which is nice. Down here in the center console, you can see that crystal shifter looks beautiful still. This is included when you go for the T8 models. It's a little finicky to use, but once you get used to it, you just push it up twice to go into reverse. That brings up the camera. Click it back twice to go to drive. Click it back again to go into the regen braking mode, which is new. We'll talk about that later in the drive scene. And then just push the P button there to go into park. That, of course, is relatively simple to use once you get used to that. I love the wood here that you find on the center console. Open this up, you can find a 12 volt or a 12 volt power outlet, wireless phone charging pad here, and then you have your two cup holders over here. It doesn't look as nice when this is open, so I recommend just keeping this closed. It adds some warmth to the cabin, which is really great to see. And then over here on the center console, you can see it's a nice padded armrest. It's relatively small. This is actually a lot smaller versus the gas-only versions because the battery pack actually lives here. So even though Volvo added a third layer of cells, they increased the capacity. This hasn't changed. It does eat into space a little bit, especially when you look back here. I'll show you that in the rear seat in a moment, but they were able to package all of this in the same space they did last year. So that's always a great thing when Volvo is able to fix that. Now looking at the steering wheel, you can see the steering wheel itself feels really light. I like the electric assist on it. It's really light. And you can see it's a manual tilt and telescoping. Volvo still doesn't do a powered tilt and telescope. At this price point, they really should, considering competitors tend to have that. The buttons haven't really changed here. They're actual hard buttons with a piano black trim. The horn sounds pretty typical for something of this size. And I also noticed the glove box when I opened it up. You can see it's still damped, lined with felt. It's a bin style. It's pretty easy to use. Above me, there's a really nice frameless rear view mirror. Volvo does not offer a digital camera rear view mirror. They do have a heads-up display on my tester with the advanced package, which works pretty well. LED lighting, of course, in the map lighting. And then if you use the touch-sensitive control here, you can see there's a pano sunroof. You can also open up this sliding sunshade completely if you'd like. And it also will tilt. It'll open all the way to the back of the vehicle, which is nice to give a little bit more light, especially when you have the darker cabin. The touch control is a little bit finicky, but once you kind of get used to it, it should work well. The seats, I drove this car for about an hour. They feel comfortable and supportive. I like the wool material, but I think I might still go for the leather because I want the massage and I want the cooled function of the seats. But overall, the cabin is relatively nice still. It feels roomy. It has a nice commanding view of the road, which is good. I personally would go for an even lighter color, but in terms of the infotainment system, until Volvo adds Apple CarPlay wireless, I really can't fully recommend it personally for me. At least they finally added the satellite radio that was actually missing in the XC40 Recharge when I first tested that sometime last year. So they're making improvements, but in an over-air update, when they finally update this with CarPlay, it should make the system one of the better ones that you'll find in the industry. Taking a look at the back seat, you can see the XC60 does have one of the larger back seats in the segment. You get around 37 inches of legroom back here, which is pretty class competitive. You can see the door panel materials are pretty much the same as what you find in the front. The seats themselves have the same textured wool material here, which looks nice. You can also fold these seats down, obviously, to give you a flat load floor. The seats themselves, I was kind of hoping they would recline, however they don't. And you can see the headrests, they're also power actuated to fold down if you'd like. Getting back here, let me show you guys the space. I'm 5'7", so getting back here is pretty easy to do that. And once I'm back here, there's plenty of space. This is definitely one of the more spacious options in the segment. Good headroom for me, especially with the pano roof coming all the way to the back. This is bigger than some competitors where I've seen it kind of stop right here. So that's a plus. The battery, again, is right between the front seats in this kind of center console area where it's lifted up. It also creates this kind of lifted area for the middle passenger, so that's something to keep in mind. If you need to actually put 3 people across in this vehicle, you do have 2 USB-C charging ports there. You have 3 level heated rear seats. And then if you're looking for rear seat air vents, it looks like it's missing. However, they're over here on the actual B pillars on each side of the vehicle, which is nice. Fold this down, you do have an armrest that folds down, and you have these little pop-out cup holders. So overall, if you're looking for a back seat that can still accommodate adults or a child seat, the XC60 should still continue to fit that bill. All right, so a few years ago when I first drove the electrified T8 powertrain in a Volvo XC60, it was pretty impressive stuff like 4 or 5 years ago. However, it is time for Volvo to give this car a pretty significant refresh, and refresh they have given the powertrain. So I'm very excited to show you guys what this is like in terms of performance, because this is just so much better now. So let's go ahead and do a quick 0 to 60 in just electric mode. And the beauty about this powertrain now is that it actually will stay in electric mode even if my foot is to the floor. It's very slow in electric mode because it only has 147 or 43 horsepower. There we go, 14.15 seconds. Now, take that number with a grain of salt, because this is if you guys leave it in pure mode and you literally are just trying to drive it in all electric. Now, I also want to point out the original T8 powertrain did not let you do that. If you literally put your foot down anywhere near full throttle, it'll wake the internal combustion engine up to give you the full 400 horsepower. So this performance is pretty comparable to the last BMW X5 xDrive 45e that I tested, which is technically a class above this car. And I also want to point out that that was going slightly uphill. So let's just say 12 seconds 0 to 60 for it in all electric. So the beauty about it though, however, now that it's electric like this, is I put my foot down, it feels like an electric car. That's the beauty about this, instantaneous torque. The numbers don't necessarily mean everything with these powertrains. Anytime you just go near the throttle, it just kind of gives you that instantaneous shove, which I believe it has like 229 pound-feet of torque. So that's something, again, to keep in mind when you guys are driving it in pure hybrid or pure electric mode. Now, I switched the drive mode over to power, and that's one thing I want to address because Volvo got rid of the drive mode selector here in the center console, and now you have to go into the screen to put it into the different drive modes. You can make it default to automatically start in pure, which is the electric only mode, which is nice. But just keep in mind, some competitors have a little bit quicker way to access this. I'm thinking about like the new Lexus NX, for example, which I just tested, which is a pretty close competitor to this car, the NX 450h Plus. But I do want to try out to see what this car is like 0 to 60 wise with the internal combustion engine on. Remember, the internal combustion engine adds like 312 horsepower on its own. Combined, this system makes 455 horsepower. It makes the T8 XC60 the most powerful of all of the vehicles that offer a plug-in hybrid in the compact to mid-size luxury segment. So that's something that is a bragging right for Volvo for sure. And honestly, I'm noticing it right away, not just the improved performance of the electric motor, but the engine itself, the 4-cylinder, is definitely much smoother. I put my foot down here. Whoa! Wow! It's still not a more, like a really pleasant sounding engine, but it's definitely improved over the old supercharged, turbocharged engine. Volvo got rid of the supercharger because they said they were chasing after better emissions, better fuel efficiency. And the result here is the turbo engine has the electric motor, which is substantially more powerful, kind of helping it along, basically helping it along so you don't have to deal with the turbo lag. The engine gets its gaps filled in by the electric motor, which is nice. But let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise. Volvo actually claims 4.5 seconds with this car, so we'll go ahead and brake torque it. It still spins out its front tires. 4.91 seconds. That's with it's going slightly uphill. So not bad. It's a little bit slower than Volvo's claim, but remember, that's with the performance going slightly uphill. I'm going to retest it in just a moment, but that's actually pretty quick. This is about a full second faster versus the Lexus NX 450h Plus that I just tested, the new version of that car, which has the same powertrain as the Toyota RAV4 Prime. Let's go ahead and try it one more time here. .07 seconds there. Again, I'm going slightly uphill, which I'd say this car could probably do it in the 4.5 seconds. It is very, very impressive performance. And I think that a lot of people are going to be satisfied with that. This should make it among the quickest in the segment, probably quicker than the Audi Q5, which I actually haven't had a chance to drive. That's probably the one to beat, honestly, because this is about a second faster than the Lexus. Let's go ahead and just try it one more time. This one looks a little bit more like a level ground. Still spitting out the front tires, hilarious. Oh my gosh. All right, 5.05 seconds. That's pretty consistent. So obviously to get maximum performance, you're gonna want to drive this car in the hybrid setting or the pure or the power setting. Anytime you go back to pure, which if you wanna go back to electric, you have to go back and hit the pure setting here, which for some reason the car's not letting me go back to pure because the engine is on. Now, the other thing I want to test out is the one pedal drive. That's a new feature this year. Lift off you have to basically engage it, you have to put the transmission from D to B, which you just click back to put it into B. And Volvo's is pretty good. It's pretty similar to the last XC40 Recharge that I drove. And I'm noticing that as soon as I lift off the throttle, pretty strong regen braking, and it puts the power back into the battery pack, which makes the car feel like an electric car. That's what I like about this new T8 powertrain. Just like the Lexus NX 450h Plus, it feels like I'm driving an electric car. Now even more so, of course, with the one pedal drive. I think it's a really great feature that they included. This one that I'm also driving is the more softly sprung Inscription model. It does have the air suspension with the continuously controlled dampers, so it has adaptive dampers. So let's go ahead and see what these curves are like. I'm driving on this road outside of Palm Springs in the city, and the XC40 or the XC60 Recharge is a really right-sized vehicle. In fact, you add about 400 pounds of weight by going with the T8 powertrain, but you also gain significantly more power. And what I love about the T8 now is with that larger battery pack, the stronger rear electric motor, everything is just working in a more harmonious way. Before there was like gaps in the power band, there was jerkiness to the transmission, there was just an overall sense that the front engine, the gas engine, which only powers the front axle, overpowered the vehicle because the rear electric motor just wasn't strong enough. Now, put my foot down here, the 8-speed auto is pretty smooth, if a little bit slow to shift, but I'm noticing a few things, and that's that it is very much a car that makes you forget that it has all of these moving components. Everything just kind of works very harmoniously together. And while the Volvo is definitely not the sportiest option, you're going to want to go with the BMW X3. BMW does not offer a plug-in hybrid X3 at the moment right now. They actually discontinued it. It wasn't that great, honestly. But what Volvo has done here is they give us a very well-rounded car that handles well, that rides well. Even I have everything in the firmest setting right now. Visibility is good. Volvo's driver assistance tech also is pretty good, although they still don't offer a full like hands-free driving capability. They offer like their Pro Pilot Assist, which is pretty similar, but it's not a true hands-free system. And I just love the way this car feels. It feels luxurious. It feels high quality. It feels unique. It feels like it has a lot of charm. And I'm just really happy that they made all these improvements, because the T8, I would have recommended it in the past, but with reservations, heavy reservations. Now, this is right on par with the last NX 450h Plus, which is probably my benchmark for me because it feels like an electric car. The NX gives you 2 miles better in terms of range. When I started this drive, it had about 33 miles on a full charge. Volvo says 35. But yeah, for a softly sprung mid-size luxury SUV, that weighs almost 5,000 pounds, this thing can surprisingly hustle. So it gets me excited to drive the Polestar engineered version, which you can get with this powertrain, but it looks even more aggressive than this. This is a little bit too soft looking on the outside for me. But Volvo is pledging to basically become fully electric by 2030. By 2025, everything will be electrified. This is that next stepping stone, and it's a big stepping stone. This really puts it back at the top of the class if you're looking for a compact to mid-size plug-in hybrid luxury SUV. So when I first got a chance to drive the T8 electrified powertrain from Volvo about 5 years ago, I was pretty impressed back then with what Volvo was offering, because this was a company that was pretty much a little bit ahead of the luxury car space in terms of electrification. However, as the years went on, I really started to notice that the T8 powertrain was starting to lag and fall behind the competition. For 2022, Volvo has clearly rectified that with the larger battery pack, the stronger electric motor, the much longer range that you get get in full EV mode. And also the fact that when you drive this car in full EV mode, it finally feels like an electric car that has a gas engine that'll extend the range of the vehicle. And that was my problem with the old model. Even when it had a full charge, if you put your foot down, it just didn't feel like an electric car because the gas engine was always coming on. Now you can put your foot down all the way to the floor without going past the click point, and it'll drive like an electric car. It's obviously a lot slower, 0 to 60, but we got 4.9 seconds when everything is working harmoniously, and that makes it one of the quickest plug-in hybrid luxury crossovers in the segment. Is this car perfect? No, I still think that the Google Android operating system, the 9-inch touchscreen, still is lacking Apple CarPlay, which Volvo keeps telling me it's coming in a refresh soon. However, until it comes, I can't give it my full recommendation because that's just important for me. If it's not important to you, this is still a really well-rounded luxury SUV that has a great ride quality. It has great visibility, great seats, great materials. It just feels super comfortable and easy to live with. Although it's not the sportiest offering, that's not the mission when you buy a Volvo, but I probably would go for at least the R Design or the Polestar Engineer to get something that looks a little bit more distinctive. Now, speaking of which, if you guys are looking to purchase this car, they are heading to Volvo dealerships now, and they're gonna start around $43,000 for the base version. You're gonna at least wanna add all-wheel drive for an extra $2,000. The T8 powertrain is gonna cost at least $55,000 minus destination. My Inscription model starts at around $62, and with all the options that my tester has, it's practically fully loaded. It's stickers for about 72 grand, which is pretty expensive. It's about $6,000 more expensive versus the last NX 450h Plus that I tested, but I believe the Audi Q5 plug-in can become pretty similar, but I do think that Volvo is asking a premium here. However, they have softened that blow because this model now qualifies for the full $7,500 federal tax credit. The previous generation, the pre-refresh model, only qualified for about $5,419, so we are going to have that offset that's going to lower the price of this car if you guys are planning to buy one, and it could be the value of the segment because now we finally have an electrified car that feels like an electric vehicle where you can drive it basically around town and do all of your errands for 35 miles and then plug it in and essentially never have to use the internal combustion engine until you go on long trips. And with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2023 Volvo XC60 T8 Recharge. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.